I'm just going to call this meeting to order on Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 for the Township of Puslinch. And we'll start with disclosure of pecuniary interest. Do we have any written disclosure of pecuniary interest? All right. All right. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. The council receives a confidential verbal report from Mary Hassan, Director of Finance / Treasurer, regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with respect to a request for an extension of time to pay property taxes, and that council authorize the Director of Finance / Treasurer to enter into an extension agreement for lands municipally known as 6671 Concession 1, Township of Puslinch, for the purpose of an extension of time to pay property taxes. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Spoulos, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. A September 4th, 2019 council meeting. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Any business arising out of minutes?
No.
No public meetings? Let's go to our communication. Let me just check for the first time. Delegation is 7:05. Okay, we'll go to communications. Give me a second here. And the first one is MF Property Management, Mini Lakes Annual Wastewater Reports. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, I was really, really happy to see this letter come in. I think that this is really good news. It shows that not only is Mini Lakes taking it seriously, but they've actually put the wheels in motion to evaluate their options and put a plan in place. I did think it was interesting that one of the options that they were looking at considering was connecting to the Puslinch municipal sewage system, which of course we don't have. But needless to say, thankfully that's not the option they decided to go with. Yeah. I did just have a question, and it talks about that they had come and spoken with the CAO, and I was just wondering if they had given any indication, Mr. CAO, as a projected timeline of completing this work.
Is this on? Okay. Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, by way of a bit of additional background, there was a request, I believe, from council to within 60 days have representatives from the development meet with the municipality to discuss the monitoring reports that were done. And the meeting was arranged, and GM Blue Plan, who provided advice on the monitoring issues, were present. Representative Amanda Pepping was present, as well as some staff. At that meeting, there were two other representatives from Aqua, who are the operators of the system. And the response basically from Aqua and from the property management company was that they were aware of the issue. They have not been sitting by. They've been actually actively looking at solutions. They've been working with their membership to find solutions. And the net result was some technical suggestions that have been made by Aqua to repair or perhaps replace the entire system. And that the objective, so the question was asked, when do you expect this work to be done? They have to go through the procurement process to retain the proper civil engineer, but their goal was to have something started in 2020 and hopefully finished by 2020. That's their goal. But they have to go through the process with the Ministry of the Environment to amend their certificate of approval. So the design has to be done, it has to be submitted, it has to be approved, contract let, and then the construction takes place. But the bottom line of the meeting was that they have taken this very seriously, and they are going to repair the system or replace the system at their cost.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Spoulos?
No, the CEO answered my question.
Thank you. Councillor Balmer?
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, so it still hasn't been decided if it's repair or replace, because they used various languages in the annual report. It was replace or optimize was the choice, and then in this report they talk about upgrade. So they haven't confirmed whether it's a whole replacement or.
I think they're waiting for the technical assessment and design to be done. Clearly, they've established a budget, which is a healthy budget to do the work, but when the technical design will be done, they potentially could salvage some components of it, I don't know. But that work is yet to be done. But the main takeaway from the meeting was they're going to fix it and make sure that the system is in compliance with the Ministry of the Environment requirements.
Okay, great.
I have no questions. I think that's a great letter, and it's great that they're taking responsibility for it, and hopefully they have it resolved in 2020. Okay, now, start with our first delegation. I'll invite Sir Bruce Peaver down to the hot seat.
Yeah.
Welcome, and as soon as Courtney has a seat, you can
Okay,
start. There we go.
perfect.
What could go wrong sitting here?
We need you until January.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, for allowing me to present tonight on the service review that we're conducting on behalf of the County of Wellington and member municipalities. The objective of tonight is to introduce you to the project and give you a briefing on where we are at with the project and answer any questions that yourself or council might have. To start, on page 2, the objectives of the project are such that we are to conduct a complete review of all the operations of each member municipality of the County of Wellington.
Can I just interrupt for one quick second?
If you wanted to use the clicker to
Oh,
just navigate
sure.
through.
There we go. My apologies. Of each member municipality to find efficiencies, operational savings, and cost effectiveness without compromising the customer service experience. The aim of the project is to identify creative and innovative solutions that are realistic and practical for implementation to achieve greater efficiency and cost savings in service delivery. So at the heart of it, that's the objective of the engagement. If you turn the page to page 3, the drivers behind this particular project are that the county and the member municipalities are conducting this service review in response to the Provincial Modernization Grant, which aims to assist small and rural municipalities' efforts to become more efficient and reduce expenditure growth in the longer term. Given the current state of the regions and 2 counties review, it's important to address the provincial expectation of reviewing systems to find cost-saving efficiencies. The engagement, the service review, it's going to be conducted in accordance with certain principles, and the key principles are that we are going to leverage the knowledge and expertise of county and municipal staff. We're going to base the framework and approach on leading practice, both from local government and other levels of government and the private sector. And while these types of projects go by many different names: core service review, service efficiency review, value for money audit, we are going to call this, for simplicity's sake, a service review. And finally, this is not an audit. In our world of KPMG, an audit has a very definite different meaning, and it also causes staff and particularly staff to feel under pressure. This is much more a project of continuous improvement to find ways to deliver services to citizens in a more effective and efficient way. We started this project on July 12th, and we are to be finished on November 29th, and we're currently halfway through. On page 4, you can see the scope and deliverables of the project. As I said, we're approximately halfway through, so we're coming to the close of phase 3. So what we've done to date is we have met with all the staff in the various municipalities of the county. We've benchmarked every municipality, And we've developed something called service profiles, which we have come back and met with each member municipality again to validate. So we're in the process of preparing an interim report for each municipality within the county, and we were to present the interim report, to county council and at a joint meeting of all the councils on September 26. However, we ran into some difficulties with the benchmarking, so that's been delayed until the end of October. We will be meeting, however, with the project team made up of all the CAOs on October 3rd, where we will present the interim report. And we expect that, and we will deliver the final report by November 29th, the agreed date. So moving into phase 4, that's going to be principally the month of October, and we're going to be holding 3 working sessions with the project team to identify opportunities, and then we're going to rank and confirm these opportunities so that each member municipalities have some opportunities or recommendations to work from going forward. The final phase, of course, is the final report and presentation. If you look on page 6, you can see that there is a high-level overview of the project, and we find this is particularly good for communicating out to staff or citizens. And then on page 7, there's always those on council that like a little more detail, so we have provided a week-by-week breakdown of the project. On page 8, you can see these are the dates the project meetings. So you can see that in October we have 3 working sessions coming up to identify and rank opportunities, to review and prioritize the opportunities, and finally confirm the recommendations. On the following page, this gives a breakdown of the different players involved with the project. So myself, I'm the project manager, and I report to Brian Bost, who is the partner for the firm responsible for the engagement. And we in turn report to Scott Wilson, who's the county CAO, as the project manager. Kelly Linton is the county warden, and he serves as the project sponsor. There is a steering committee or project team made up of all the CAOs of the member municipalities, and then the county clerk is providing administrative support. There's a couple of pages of administrative detail, but on page 11, there's an example of a status report that is circulated to to the project manager at the county every 2 weeks. Again, there's some administrivia with respect to the engagement, and then on the final page is a listing of the project team members from KPMG. I welcome Mr. Mayor, yourself or council, if you have any questions or if you'd like to provide any further input into the engagement, to please contact me directly. I have my email address there or my phone number, and I'd welcome a conversation with anybody on council. And that is the end of our presentation. I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Guida?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for coming to council today, just to keep us in the loop as to what the expected outcomes are, and what you're including in the review. I really have to say I'm pleased with sort of the direction that the county and all the municipalities have decided to go with this, to modernize service delivery and find efficiencies. And I think that as much as we already are a municipality that is constantly doing more with less, I see this as an opportunity for each municipality to draw on sort of the expertise and the experience and the successes of other municipalities, to find ways of making things work better and more efficiently. I think that this type of collaborative effort is probably, the way of the future, really, and I think we're seeing that come down from the province. So really the only question that I have is, it talks about in the final report, it says that you will include specific recommendations with regards to changes in services, programs, resources, and responsibilities, including services being expanded, reduced, discontinued, or deliver in an alternate manner. It doesn't specifically say in there that it will include the possibility of sharing services, but I guess I'm just clarifying that that is something that's being looked at.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that specifically we'll be looking at shared services.
Okay.
Our findings, our preliminary findings is that all the townships or member municipalities within the county operate on a very lean budget. So the services that you provide are required under legislation usually, or are what we call essential. So, there's very few services that you could say that you could get out of or shed. For example, this particular township is not offering or does not operate golf courses, which is always a favorite opportunity for this type of engagement. But there are significant opportunities, we believe, in sharing the delivery of services between member municipalities, and it doesn't have to always involve the county either.
Okay. When you say looking at sharing opportunities amongst member municipalities, would you also be looking at member municipalities sharing service delivery with the county as well? And I'm thinking more along the lines of IT and HR, and sort of instead of the county having an IT department and each member municipality having their own IT department or contracting IT, that maybe the county could do it for all the municipalities and, things like that. Are you looking at that as well?
Yes, we will be looking at
Okay.
that as well.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Spoulos?
Yeah, I'll ask staff a few questions before I ask you. Director of Finance, with respect to taxes, percentage-wise and dollar-wise that the residents pay, what is the breakdown between the township, Wellington County, and education?
So based on the 2019 tax levy bylaw, approximately 59% to the county, 16% to the township, and 25% to education.
Mr. Mayor, I understand our township has 8% of the county population, and we pay 15% of the taxes, that's correct? Mr. CAO, in your experience, what's a typical percentage between top-tier and lower-tier municipalities?
Well, it varies on the types of services that are being provided in the location. I live in Caledon, the town of Caledon. The geography is comparable. It's a large rural community, has a larger population, but it has a larger population base and land base. It's in a two-tier system. It's in regional government. So the services typically provided by the region are not dissimilar to what a county service would a county would provide to a municipality. So they're quite comparable in terms of geography, in terms of structure. They're similar. In the town of Caledon, I know that the local share of a tax bill is 46%. So when my house is assessed at a certain figure, it's current value assessment, the same assessment system right across the province, I can find something comparable in this municipality. In the same geography, I live in the country, there's lots of country properties here. When I pay my tax bill at Caledon, 46% of the tax bill stays with the area municipality. The region, I think it's roughly 30 or 28%, and the balance goes to education.
Thank you. Another question. With respect to services that the county provides globally to the municipalities, what services do you think we don't use?
You don't use?
Yeah.
Well, typically upper tiers, like consolidated service managers, they call them, provide many of the downloaded services that the province had gifted to municipalities back in the last century. So things like public housing, social services, those kinds of services tend to be expensive, and they're typically done at the county or a county level. So I don't know the exact numbers in the county budget, but I think there's a significant amount of their budget goes to that for that purpose.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Peaver, there's a big disparity between what we contribute to the county and other second-tier municipalities. As the CEO mentioned, it's legislated how the taxes are assessed. But as part of your study, can you look at the sort of accounting for the disparity and having the county pick up some of the services that we normally contract out in lieu of the services that we do not provide? Or that we do not need, I should say?
Certainly, we can have that, Mr. Mayor, we can have that discussion with the county as part of the working sessions that we're going to hold in October. But that's really the best I can do, however, is just, we will have that discussion.
Okay, I think it's important that we have a discussion, because for years, our residents have been voicing their concern that they're paying an extraordinary number of tax, and I suspect the rest of the townships and municipalities also look to see, well, how come County of Wellington gets all this funding, whereas other typical counties don't get as much.
Okay.
The second question I have, on slide 8, you mentioned that there'll be some review done with the CAOs and with selected members of municipalities. Is this selected members of municipalities, are they elected officials, or are they members of the community? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it's the steering committee of CIOs and potentially other staff that belong to the municipality. So if the CIO of a municipality wanted to bring, for example, the director of finance or the director of public works, they could do so.
I see. Okay. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, that was the October 7th meeting you were asking about?
That's correct.
Yeah, I had the same question, because it wasn't clear. But on a similar note, you mentioned that on the September 26th meeting was going to be with county council and councils, and that was postponed. Was that one intended to be everybody?
Believe so, Mr. Mayor,
Wow.
to the councillor, yes.
Okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I had no other questions.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that meeting has been put off to October 30th.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I also see some efficiencies in our soft services. We're already using the county for our planning department. We contract out our IT. There are opportunities for some efficiencies working with member municipalities. I don't know if the Director of Finance could clarify this, but we receive our portion of the tax bill, and there's not an opportunity to say the county lowers it. The only way to get our portion higher, so if you pay $5,000 total in taxes, we get our percentage. To get that percentage up, you'd have to pay a total of $8,000 in taxes, and ours be a bigger chunk. It's not a matter of taking from
The county.
the county to pay us.
It's increasing our budget.
Exactly, it's getting our budget up. But I understand where you're saying is because we're paying a bigger piece of the pie, we should be given a little bit more consideration for these soft services, so that, whether we pay IT in Kingston or pay the county, that's not a savings for us. But I think that was the direction Councillor Sapoulos was going at, is that this portion of the amount of taxes paid, we maybe should get a little bit more in-kind services.
No, I understand the point that you're trying to make. There is some truth to that, but certainly not the ratios that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mayor, can I just make one clarifying comment? I've been very pleasantly surprised since I've joined this municipality around the level of cooperation at a staff level we get from the county. So as an example, we have one of the planning staff who's here tonight. We have an arrangement with the county to provide a planning service, and they provide policy planning and current planning as well. An example of sort of this shared responsibility is the source water protection arrangement that we currently have. So that's essentially funded by the county. The individual works out of Center Wellington, I believe, but provides the service. in the discussions that I've had with the CAO at the county, they're more than willing to talk about other ways of providing service to the municipality. And I think to Councillor Saposa's point, I think the fact that you're already paying for the levy puts you in a good position to have more conversations about providing services. But we've had nothing but positive feedback and response from the county staff, and I'm hoping when we have our first meeting with the CAO group, we can impress upon them that we want to continue to build on that relationship, because the goal, as Mr. Peaver said, is to be more efficient, reduce costs, and provide better services. And when I see what the county has, they could really help, I think, this municipality, especially on the back office side of things. So.
Just one further comment from me. I've worked for 3 different municipalities. I received 3 times harassment training for each municipality. When I sat with the county, the Director of Human Resources, she stated that all of their policies are available to our municipality, and it might be taking a page out of our CAO's book and just get people in a room and get them aware that these services are available. So I look forward to your report, and I'll probably be contacting you afterwards just to give you a little bit of input on my side. All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor Ballmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda. The council receives a presentation by Bruce Peaver, Director KPMG, with respect to the operational services efficiency for the County of Wellington and its member municipalities. All in favor? Carried. All right, we'll ask our next delegation to come down, please, which is Stuart Winchester. Stuart, nice to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll maybe just, before you actually get formally started, I'll just let Ms. White Fox have a seat.
Yep.
Don't forget to click. Just waiting on the television screen, Councilor Ballmer.
Oh, I think we're there.
Isn't technology a wonderful thing?
Oh, when it works.
It always fails when you need it.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, no? All right. We're good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and staff. Happy to be here tonight to present the results of our feasibility study, our reduced scope feasibility study for provision of water and wastewater servicing in the township of Puslinch. I'm going to make this work. No?
If it's not working, we'll just carry on.
Am I going the wrong way?
Try the other way, the other button. Just the side.
The side button.
Yeah, the side buttons.
Side button.
There we go.
That works. So we put together a brief presentation tonight just to speak to the objectives of the study, some background, and the scope of the feasibility study, as well as to speak to some of the high-level servicing options that were considered. We did briefly speak to some cost recovery options. And we did, as part of the study, we did circulate a questionnaire to the potential beneficiaries of this program, and we'll speak to the results that we received from that survey. So the objective of the feasibility study was just to conduct a very high-level assessment of the feasibility of providing municipal water and wastewater services to industrial and commercial users within the Aberfoyle settlement area. If there's a number of councillors that were on the previous council that were aware of the previous study that looked at a much larger service area and also included a significant number of residential properties. As part of that assessment, there was a significant objection by the residential property owners within the study area, and as such, the previous council made the decision to reduce the scope of the study and revisit just the industrial commercial users within Aberfoyle. So as I'd indicated, the objective of this study was really to look at high-level servicing options and to provide some information for council to make decisions as to whether you wish to proceed or not to proceed with further study to develop a water wastewater system for the service area. One of the drivers of the study was the business retention and expansion study that was conducted by the county a few years ago. It identified that the lack of municipal services was a constraint to industrial commercial development within Aberfoyle. So because that study came forward, the previous council authorized the initial study to proceed. One of the good points about the township is its location. Adjacent to Highway 401, you have excellent transportation facilities, and you have excellent opportunity for growth. But if you have this constraint related to water wastewater servicing, that will limit your potential for growth in that sector. So the next slide just speaks to the reduced study area and just identifies the areas that were in consideration for this assessment. As I indicate on here, the focus is just on industrial and commercial uses within this study area. Residential users were specifically excluded based on previous council direction. In this area, the township already has a number of major industrial commercial users, Royal Canin, Nestle's, Capital Paving, Concast, Dufferin Aggregates. So you do have a lot of users and a lot of significant water users within this area. According to the county official plan, you are looking at some moderate growth in employment within the study area. From 2016 to 2041, you're looking at an increase of approximately 1,600 employees. Now, that's not a significantly large number, but we have to remember that these projections are based on the lack of municipal services. These numbers would likely change if services were available in the area. How much? I don't know. Based on the population projections that were included within the official plan, we've developed projected water flows and sewage flows for 2041, which is a 20-year planning horizon. This is typically the horizon that we're looking at when we're planning for municipal water wastewater services. We don't want to overcommit and overbuild and make allowances for growth in the future, or we make the allowances for growth in the future, but we don't want to overbuild upfront and then end up with a significantly oversized facility. So the projected flows are identified on this chart. I don't think I need to go through each number. But we are looking at average day demands, maximum day demands. Water supplies, we are typically looking at making provision for max day demands in your distribution system. Your supply system can look at average day demands, and you supplement flows from local storage. For wastewater flows, we look at average day flows for your typical treatment capacity and treatment processes, but we do need to make sure that the facility can accommodate your peak wet weather flows to avoid any bypasses and spills to the natural environment. So in summary, I've gone a little too far. We've identified maximum day demands of approximately 2,900 cubic meters a day for water demand and approximately 6,500 cubic meters a day for wastewater demand. And I know that there will be a question as to why there's a significant discrepancy between the two numbers. And it's primarily, in this case, it's primarily because we are looking at a relatively large service area that we need to account for an infiltration allowance for those areas. But we are looking at relatively low employment population numbers through there. If services are available, I would expect that the population numbers would increase, so your sewage generation numbers would increase and your water demands would increase and bring those two numbers closer together. What we looked at were two very high-level servicing alternatives. Essentially, looking at a standalone servicing option if everything is township-owned, township-operated, or alternatively, if you looked at intermunicipal servicing, and we primarily looked at connection to the Guelph systems, water and wastewater. So on this figure, we've identified a conceptual servicing scheme for intra-municipal servicing for water. We've identified an approximate location for well supply up near the boundary of the city of Guelph. We've identified that area because that is an area that it's been identified in a Guelph study, which identified that as a preferred area for water taking. And I forget the name of the report, so I apologize right now. There is no commitment that we have to use that location, but we do know that there is water in that vicinity, that it would be available to you. Further hydrogeological study would be necessary to identify alternate locations which may bring the source closer to the Aberfoyle settlement area and reduce some of the external pipeline requirements. We've assumed that there would be an elevated storage facility incorporated with this servicing scheme, primarily to reduce the capacity, the well supply, to only meet average day demands, and you would supplement the peak hour demands or maximum day demands through storage that is provided within the elevated tank. That approach reduces the cost of your conveyance, your trunk water main from your well supply to the service area, but the actual preferred solution would be established through further study at a Class EA stage. The intermunicipal servicing option is very similar, except we would be looking at connection to the Guelph supply system. In this scenario, we would be looking at a metering facility at the Guelph boundary, as well as most likely a pressure-reducing facility at that location, since the system pressures in Guelph would be substantially higher than what you would need within Aberfoyle. Again, we looked at a elevated storage facility within Aberfoyle to reduce the conveyance capacity on that pipeline coming down Brock Road. So based on those two alternatives, we generated some preliminary cost estimates for each alternative and identified costs in the order of $23 million for the intermunicipal. I think that might... Are we backwards on that? 23 million, I think we may be backwards on that. On the standalone facility, or standalone approach, is 23 million, and we're at 20 million if we connect to a Guelph system. But what we do have to remember is that the connection to the Guelph system, and our estimate on this, excludes any capital cost contributions to connect to the Guelph system, and it also excludes any bulk water supply rates that Guelph may charge if you do connect. So similarly, we looked at the same scenarios for wastewater treatment. So for the intermunicipal system, we were looking at a local collection system through Aberfoyle with a centralized pump station to pump to a treatment facility over on the west end of the study area with discharge to Mill Creek. We all understand that Mill Creek is a sensitive stream. We know that there would be a significant amount of additional study required to assess the assimilative capacity of that watercourse to see if that would be technically feasible. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that as part of the scope of this study, just due to schedule and budget constraints on this study. High-level cost estimate on this approach would be approximately $29 million to service the Aberfoyle area. The intermunicipal servicing option, again, follows similar to the water system, where we have a local collection system, centralized pump station, and pumping into the Guelph collection system. There is certainly a significant capital cost savings on this approach, but again, the negotiations with Guelph have not been advanced. We don't know what the capital cost contributions would be, and we don't know for sure if capacities would be made available to the township. Again, we've summarized the costs, and we can go through the same assessment. The capital cost certainly is going to be cheaper going to Guelph, but there are unknowns in that approach. This chart outlines just potential cost recovery on the basis of full cost recovery from the benefiting owners. We have not done a detailed assessment of, this class of owner will pay this percentage versus this class of owner, which may pay a different percentage. That, again, would be subject to a detailed cost recovery plan through a Class EA study if the township decides to proceed in that manner. What we've done is I believe it was 128 benefiting properties. We took 128 properties and divided the total cost amongst all 28. What we did look at here is the potential cost reductions if the township is able to secure provincial funding assistance through the federal or provincial grant programs. However, given the current government out there, I'm not sure you're going to be successful in that route anytime soon. Following the public meeting, we did issue a questionnaire survey to the industrial commercial users within Aberfoyle, and we sent out the 128 questionnaires. And of those 128, we received 29 responses. The 29 responses, we got 17 in favor, 7 against, and 1 was undecided. So from a percentage of the respondents, it seems everybody's very much in favor. However, with the low response rate, I'm not certain how valid that assessment is going to be. I think that is going to be up to township staff or township council to have discussions directly with the industrial and commercial property owners to gauge that interest a little bit further. So that ends my presentation. If I have any questions, I'll try to respond.
Councilor Goyda?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation today. Going out, whether we were going to proceed with this revised scope, it was actually the very first item on the very first agenda of this new council, of this new term. But, during that campaign time, it was really clear that, the residents were very clear that this was not something that they wanted to pay for. But in that original study, it had said that 60% of the industrial commercial landowners had expressed interest in investigating this further. And so, recognizing that the commercial and industrial landowners are an important part of this municipality and of the tax base. And also recognizing that, residential growth is being limited here in the township with the province, provincial policies directing growth to areas with municipal services. It made sense to explore this option, but I think what I was really hoping to understand from the study were a couple of things. And one was whether this was something that was actually needed. And second of all, what would it cost to fulfill that need, and how much would those commercial industrial landowners be willing to bear? And so I do have a couple of questions, but they relate more to sort of those 2 points. So in regards to the actual need, we saw that there was 128 property owners surveyed and only 29 responded. So, 17 of those said yes, but 17 out of 128 isn't a really convincing number. So I'm wondering, why do you think that response was so low? Do you think it's because there's actually really just not really very much interest, or is it because of other reasons, like maybe there was a lack of understanding of what we were trying to achieve?
Unfortunately, that's a very difficult question to answer, trying to guess the responses of the business owners. Unfortunately, with studies of this nature, response rates are typically quite low. Getting a 30% response rate or a 40% response rate is actually not unusual, and actually maybe more unusual getting that high of a response rate. So unfortunately, that is the nature of the public consultation process, is that you don't get a lot of direct feedback, until the actual charges are going out to the individual business.
In regards to the costs and the projection of the costs, there was one thing that I was surprised by. And so each of the options that you are looking at require for some land acquisition, for some infrastructure that would be required. And the cost that you have those land parcels valued at, and they're 1 acre parcels, is $300,000. Currently, there's 1 acre parcels within the township easily selling for $500,000. And I would assume that within Aberfoyle, it would be much higher than that. So I realize that that's only a small component of the total cost that we're looking at, but it raises the question in my mind is, if we're projecting that low, are there other things that we're also projecting low? And I guess what I'm asking is, with the exception of not knowing what the city of Guelph would charge if we were to connect to them, what's a reasonable amount to expect this number to go up?
The variance on that, that becomes a very difficult question. These estimates have been prepared with no detailed design completed. We've got conceptual design. We have typical unit prices for linear infrastructure that I do see across the province. And that these numbers that I've incorporated in there are very typical to those costs for carried at Class EA stages, right? So there is a fair amount of contingency built into those costs up front. We recognize that there is going to be a fair amount of variance on various components. We also recognize that I'm giving you this estimate today. Realistically, if everything went smoothly, you might be looking at delivering this in 5 years. So I have accounted for some escalation in those costs. Notwithstanding, I would definitely say that my cost estimate is plus or minus 25%. So there is a significant opportunity for variance. Those costs should be refined. If the township does proceed, those costs would be refined through the Class EA process, where you would do some preliminary design development. You would look at your cost recovery plan, and you would be able to refine those numbers at that point.
So really, when we're looking at these numbers, we should be maybe giving or take 25%.
Yes.
Which on 50 million is like another 15 million,
Yes.
which is a lot.
No question.
And I guess that brings me to my next question as to, what the landowners are willing to bear. And under the cost recovery options, the chart that you had prepared, based on assuming no funding and basing on the interconnection, because it's a little more for sure what that is involved in that. The total divided by 128 is for simple math, and that combined total, if we did both sewer and water, totals $406,000 per connection. At 30%, it's like $525,000 a connection. So understanding that some property owners would pay more and some would pay less, really what we're looking at is each individual landowner paying in and around average of $400,000 to $500,000. And I don't know, maybe that is, something that's reasonable. Maybe the property values would increase by that or more. But I guess really what my question boils down to is, by having each of these landowners paying $400,000 to $500,000 to connect to these services, at the end of the day, what is the township really gaining, and what are these individual landowners really gaining from that?
Well, the township certainly would be gaining a more attractive place for industrial, commercial growth. The township, as I indicated, if there is a further study, if the township does decide to proceed, the township can look at the cost recovery plan, look at potentially oversizing some of these facilities and allocating some cost to future development that may be occurring. So you could reduce the cost burden to the initial 128 property owners and recover some additional costs through development charges for future growth. But those are calculations and analysis that would need to be done in future study.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a few questions for staff. Would you prefer that we allow the rest of council to go through to ask questions and do the staff questions after?
You're speaking now, you may.
Okay. I have a question from our CAO. Mr. CAO, theoretically, if we were to go ahead with any of these options, a special area levy would be implemented on all these 128 property owners. But what would happen, we would decide on how that's going to be calculated, whatever percentage, but what would the process be if some or all of those property owners weren't able or willing to pay? What would happen at that point in time?
Yeah, so typically, and it's all prescribed in provincial legislation and regulations. It would be like a local improvement charge. So essentially, you would define the area that's going to be achieving the benefit. You would then have a way of calculating the costs and applying those costs. So sometimes it's based on the frontage charges. There's a number of different calculations that are ways of actually doing this. The challenge, though, with something like that is you define the benefiting property owners, and then they have certain rights to appeal whatever model is being contemplated. So typically, it goes before whatever they call the OMB these days, and there's a hearing that takes place, and the hearing then looks at the official plan designation, which is dry industrial right now. It looks at a bunch of factors, and then they ultimately make a determination. So it's not. I mean, it's not straightforward. There's another process that one has to go through in order to finance this thing. I think another issue relating to the financing piece is, at the end of the day, we're talking about cost recovery of something. But let's assume for the moment we go through the exercise in 5 years, where we go to tender and we're going to award a contract to someone to build a $50 or $60 million facility. is the township has to write the check. The contractor has to be paid. So it's a cash flow issue that's of concern to the municipalities because they have to pay the contractor. So yes, there will be debenture, there will be some sort of an arrangement where money flows back, but that debt payment has a significant impact on your operating budget. Currently now, my understanding is you have zero debt. Is that right? No
Yes,
debt.
that's correct.
You have no debt. So you'll be going from having no debt to a lot of debt, and I know the treasurer has done some numbers on how that might look.
Okay. So currently, based on the 2019 annual repayment limit, our annual repayment limit is approximately $750,000. And this is legislated at 25% of net revenues. Municipal best practice is usually 10% of net revenues, which would approximate at $300,000. And if you're looking to issue a 20-year debenture for this type of project, utilizing that municipal best practice of 10% of net revenues, you're looking at raising only $6 million based on what our current annual repayment limit is. Yeah.
So we're short. Yeah. That was going to be my next question, is what our limit was and what that equals to over time. The very last question that I have, I'm sorry for all the questions, and I think this is probably for our Director of Finance, but if there were to be a grant to be announced at some point in time that this project would perhaps qualify for, would the EA component of it need to be complete already in order to qualify for the grant?
So there are different grant funding applications. For example, a recent one that we applied for was the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Fund, and it was for some bridge upgrades. And for bridges, an environmental assessment is required. We don't have an environmental assessment at this time, and we've indicated that in our application, and our project has been nominated by the province to the federal government for review. So every application and grant funding process is different.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Spoulos?
Yeah, with respect to the survey, were the survey results named? In other words, you knew who said yay or nay type of thing?
The survey results did come back, or I guess, Mr. Mayor, through you, the survey results did come back, and they came from specific firms and from specific names. So the township does have those survey results, so that information is available to you.
Okay. In terms of the yeses, is there a particular geographical area of the industrial area that the yeses came from? What I'm looking at is, say, the most of the undeveloped areas, sort of west of Brock Road.
I'll be honest, we did not look to see if there was any geographic correlation on the responses.
Okay. That's all I have. I'd like to move a motion once we finish with the questions.
Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you. Good evening and welcome back.
Okay.
When talking about the water supply, the standalone water supply system, you did mention that you're considering the well that was identified. I think it was the Guelph Water Supply Master Plan identified a
That was a study.
supply well in the area you're talking about. And of course, it makes sense that you'd recommend that an alternative location be considered, since they've already identified it for themselves. And it's probably only about 4 kilometers from the Burke Well on Arkle Road, 4 or 5 kilometers. But you made an interesting point about if we did move it, it would be moved closer to Aberfoyle, reducing the cost of the pipes in the ground. But I do recall that one of the concerns that drove this process in the first place was concerns that source water protection policies that would be put in place to protect Guelph's wells would limit industrial activities here in the township or further development activities around our employment lands. So it seems to me that if we move our municipal well closer to our industrial lands, doesn't that move, there'd be source water protection policies associated with that well too, wouldn't there? And they'd end up
Certainly, if there was development or consideration of a development of a municipal well closer to Aberfoyle or in the area identified under the Guelph Water Supply Master Plan, they would be subject to the
Source water protection.
source water protection. Thank you.
Whether it's our well or their well.
It really doesn't matter. It is going to be subject to the same provisions, the same considerations that need to be addressed.
Okay. So the concern about doing this to get out from underneath Guelph source water protection really isn't addressed by having our own well.
No. Now, one thing that should be considered is if we are providing municipal water to the industrial commercial users, theoretically, they are then disconnecting their own private wells, and the net taking from the aquifer would be no change.
Yeah. But it'd be concentrated in one place.
And the benefit to the township is that you then have control of that facility, and you can ensure that all steps are taken to ensure that that water is safe and delivered to the users in the area.
Right, understood. But we haven't got it, there's been no concerns on that front
Exactly.
currently, so.
Yep.
It'll address a concern we don't currently have.
Yep.
So, okay. Also, on page 21, you talk about that all well supplying industrial and commercial users be decommissioned. And it also says that further consideration could be given regarding communal systems during the Class EA. I guess I'm falling behind the times here. What commercial systems are we talking about
Our
here?
communal systems, and I'm going to have to revisit that particular statement on that report.
Okay, because I wasn't aware that we had any other than residential communal systems.
And I'm thinking that may have just slipped through and been carried forward from the previous report.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yep.
But I haven't been here forever. Well, maybe to some I have been. Also on page 21, there's a note about all of the infrastructure for the waterworks will be in existing road right-of-ways, except for the crossing under the 401. And I looked at the map, and it looked like the scope study area was all north of 401. So again, what was the purpose of the crossing?
Again, that would be a carryover from the previous study when we were incorporating Morriston within the previous study.
Okay, so it's not just to connect those
Yeah,
two,
no,
the
no,
North American
this-
Construction or something?
No.
Okay, because they're commercial too, so I wasn't sure if we were going to propose and just go down, the corridor to the businesses down there. All right, super. The other one. Oh, on the wastewater side, Councillor Goyda mentioned that, it was December, at our December 5th council meeting, council supported Councillor Sapoulis' suggestion that Mill Creek not be considered as a outflow for the wastewater treatment plant. I think council supported that suggestion. So I must admit, I was surprised to see the suggestion that we're going to put it into Mill Creek return onto this revised study. But I also noted that the possibility of putting it into Speed River remained as a possible suggestion. So I'm just wondering, the Speed River crosses the sort of the northwest corner of the township, roughly from Concession or Side Road 10, where Stroy's Bridge came out, to the end of Forestal Road. And I wondered if you knew if there were any wastewater treatment plants, what the proximity of any other wastewater treatment plants would be to that reach of the creek where we'd be able to dispose it, or of Speed River.
Off the top of my head, I'm not certain. I believe Guelph's wastewater treatment plant discharges to the Speed, but again,
how
I'm
far,
not
eh?
proximity.
I didn't get a chance to figure out
Yep.
that distance. And do you know how far downstream it is to the one in Hespeler on the Speed?
Again, I'm not exactly certain where you're specifically speaking to, but Hespeler's treatment plant is not far
Yeah.
not far west of the boundary with Puslinch. So
Yeah.
I would expect maybe 2 kilometers at most.
So we've got a pretty narrow band on the Speed that, I'm trying to get a sense of.
And again, the whatever receiving watercourse that we consider through further study would be subject to an assimilative capacity study.
Understood.
So whether it's Mill Creek, whether it's Speed River, that study would be required, And that study would identify the treatment capacity, or treatment, level of treatment required for the effluent discharge from the facility.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of a thumbnail at this level of whether it's even feasible to consider, is there sufficient capacity between those two existing systems, just from a high level, but we don't know that, so that's.
Yeah,
don't
at
know
this
that.
point, we don't know for sure either one would be technically feasible.
Okay. So then, we also don't know how far it would be, we don't have even, I get a sense of how far it would be to pump the stuff all the way there from where they're currently being proposed at Mill Creek. Or-
We could certainly determine a route for that and identify a potential cost for that component.
But it'd be significantly more than what we're looking at now. Probably because it's gotta be, I'm gonna guess 10 or 15 kilometers, I don't know. Maybe 10, I don't know. And when you mentioned previously about having to, since it's west of the Hanlon, would crossing the Hanlon create any additional challenges to get to the speed? It's a provincial highway, putting a sewer underneath that. I guess it's done all the time. Cambridge did it under the 401.
And I believe Guelph just a couple of years ago puts services under the Hanlon for the Hanlon Business Park. So yes, it can be done. There certainly is can be a significant cost to that. Typically, the ministry will require that any crossing be done in a trenchless manner.
Right. That's not cheap. We did that with the Carroll Pond. It was fascinating. The other new suggestion that came up was the idea of subsurface disposal, and this kind of relates to Councillor Goyda's question. I was trying to figure out how many acres would be required for a subsurface disposal system that would, and I don't know what the proper term would be for a municipal one, but, on residential, we talk about reasonable use guidelines from the Ministry of Environment, at property lines. So how big an area would we need to have for how many acres would we need for a subsurface disposal system?
And again, that would be subject to a hydrogeological study for any area that you may identify as a potential area for subsurface disposal. We would need to know the soil types. We would need to know the separation from ground surface to water table. You would be looking at a hydrogeological model to establish what the mounding underneath the disposal system would be to make sure that you don't inundate your system and cause it to malfunction.
But
So there is a significant amount of study that would be required to establish whether that's feasible or not.
So we don't even, I just kind of expected for it to make it into the report, I thought it'd be some idea of what that would be, but I guess not. That's
The
another unknown.
intention with that was just to identify potential alternatives that could be utilized through the further study.
Okay, so
So I just want to interject. I don't want to analyze every hypothetical situation for.
no, I'm just trying to get
Okay.
the various options that were presented to see if they're feasible or, because they're not hypothetical, they were presented in the report. So I'll move along.
Thank you.
Is that what we're doing?
On the numbers that were presented, again, we talked about this before, that the inflation and escalation costs make it impossible pretty much to determine what actual construction costs would be in the future. So I'm wondering, but we used inflation and escalation costs in the report to come up with net present value of 20-year life cycle costs. So I don't understand how it's possible, why it's not possible for one, but we can use those same calculations to come up with other numbers.
The net present value calculation is really just intended to compare two alternatives where the capital cost may be significantly different, but the operating cost may also be significantly different. You may pay higher capital costs, but have lower operational costs versus lower capital and higher operational.
Okay.
So based on very typical but assumed inflation and interest rates, we try to compare what the net present value would be for 20 years of operation of each alternative.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's only a comparative. It's
Got it.
not intended to be, this would be the number. It's
Good.
comparative only.
That's very helpful, because I didn't get that out of the report, that it was to compare each option for its potential operating costs.
Yep.
I was looking at it as
Here's what it would
as
be.
a sum for each. Okay, got it. But it was interesting to see that you used the 6% investment rate. I would like, if you could leave the card of the place where you can get that with our finance department, because I'm not aware of any place where we can get 6% interest on municipal money, but but I'll leave that point aside. I think that's just a number. You had to come up with something, and it didn't necessarily have to be what we could get.
Well, I certainly have been charged 6%.
Yes, I have been too, but we were, in this report, it was how much we would make by investing it. It wasn't how much would be charged, it was the investment income would be 6%, and I'd certainly like to achieve that. Yeah, we talked about the business response. I think we heard clearly from the business community at the PIC, at the Public Information Center, that there's a lot of concerns here about the costs they're going to be facing. And that 80% non-response spoke volumes to me. I'm also concerned that I've spoken to several business owners in the industrial park who are leasing a space and receive nothing. So the landowners may have got it. Some of the business owners, I'm not sure if every business owner got it. I'm not sure when that 128 represents all the businesses or all the property owners, because it's not always the same thing. Do you know if it was the businesses or the property owners?
Again, off the top of my head, the township staff provided us the list, the mailing list, so we delivered based on that list. I couldn't tell you at this point whether it was the property owners or the business owners.
Okay. One last thing. Thank you. You're welcome. In the summary of the report, it talks about the projection numbers, or the employment growth projections being consistent with the official plan, or being established consistently with the official plan. When I look at the official plan, those employment growth numbers are considered to occur across the township and I believe in all of our designated employment lands, including the ones next to Hanlon. But in this report, it considers all of that growth to occur within the scope study area. And I struggle with seeing that what the county official plan sees as occurring across the township. To see that as being consistent with having it all in one area, it may be the same numbers, but I wouldn't say it's consistent with how the official plan sees it. And when I look at the actual numbers, if we look at the numbers presented in the report and confirmed by the county, that about 55% of employment currently takes place in the scope study area, or about 2,200 jobs. And that area, I think, is 90 to 95% built out. So we've got 5 to 10% growth left in there. We're talking 110 to 220 jobs. So I'm struggling with how this report envisions getting 1,600 jobs, accommodating 1,600 new jobs in an area that otherwise would suggest we're only expecting to see 100 to 200 in job growth.
Again, the numbers were taken from the official plan, and the numbers were presented and coordinated with the county planning staff. They vetted those numbers. They identified that was reasonable given there. In the event that the township does proceed with communal servicing for the Aberfoyle area, I would anticipate that the majority of your employment growth would occur within that area, notwithstanding that the projection would be for greater growth beyond. I think you would realize that growth within Aberfoyle itself. You would get higher density, higher employment densities within the area.
Okay, so then to accommodate that, we'd have to,
Certainly,
we'd have to change things, yeah.
If the township was to proceed with municipal servicing, there's a number of studies that would have to be addressed and reviewed, including your official plan for your growth projections within the service area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, thank you for your hard work on this project. I understand it's very difficult with so many unknowns. We don't even know if the city of Guelph will let us connect to their wastewater or their water. This chart that shows the 13% in favor, it's obvious to me that we had a 60% in favor when the residential component was included because they wouldn't be paying the full freight. And as soon as there was more of a component of the industrial sector paying, that dropped off. And along with the fact of Mill Creek, there's a lot of unknowns, and I appreciate your hard work on this. It's just, to me, it just doesn't seem like a good fit for this municipality, especially with the financial implications. So again, I thank you for your hard work. I'm going to read a resolution. Councillor Spillis has, and it actually just states on.
Yeah, no, you pointed out to me that my resolution's tagged onto the motion you're going to be reading, so I'm fine with that.
All right, moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor, actually should be the other way, right? Because it's your motion? Or are you fine?
No, that's
You're
fine,
Okay.
that's fine.
Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spillis. The council receives a presentation by Stuart Winchester, Public Engineer, Partner Director, Municipal Infrastructure, SEMA, regarding the feasibility study for municipal water and sewage servicing, and that the addendum to the feasibility study for water and sewage servicing prepared by SEMA Canada, Inc., dated August 28th, 2029, be received, and that council directs staff to report back if third-party funding becomes available for an environmental assessment and the capital costs associated with construction. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
All right, running a little bit behind, so I'll ask our third delegation, Jason Zachary, to come down to the table, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll just ask you to wait a moment until.
Oh, that's no problem.
White spot.
It's all good.
Doesn't drop the TV on the CAO's head. Good.
Not like last time. Just kidding.
The only thing is you have to speak into that microphone.
Fairly loud already. All right, I'll make it official by having the microphone there.
You're going to be on YouTube in 24 hours.
Yeah.
No problem. Sign the consent. That's okay.
Too late.
All right, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason Saker. I am the head coach of the UTM Morrison U19 girls softball team. We are one of many Provincial Women's Softball Association affiliated teams. We are one of a few under the UTM umbrella. It's an organization similar to Guelph has Guelph Gators, Waterloo has Waterloo Ghosts. We have UTM Revolution. We are one of 9 teams throughout South and Southwestern Ontario. There are teams in in areas such as Drumbo and Princeton, as well as Windsor and Bolton, just to name a few areas. I'm here requesting to at least get the ball rolling on reviewing, not sure if it's already been done, an upgrade on the washroom facilities at Old Morrison Park. You may wonder, why have I chosen Old Morrison Park over diamonds such as Aberfoyle and Morrison Meadows? I have a long relationship, we'll say, with Old Morrison Park, having coached an opposing team here for over a decade and a half. I was always one who liked the diamond, especially when it had working washrooms, but the diamond itself, I thought, has been better and is better than Aberfoyle as a diamond itself. It has lights like Aberfoyle, whereas Morrison Metal does not. I like the proximity off the 401, even though Aberfoyle is close in range. I have girls coming from Orangeville and Woodstock to play on the team that I'm coaching. It's a nice central location for those girls, along with girls coming from Waterloo, Guelph, and Erin, Ontario, to name a few. I'm personally from Burlington, and I've been out this way, like I said, for over a decade and a half coaching, whether it's women's or U19 girls softball. I think we can agree that, having one team of U19 girls and visiting teams of U19 girls, that a porta potty is a quick Band-Aid approach and fix, not necessarily ideal, whereas a working washroom would be. Again, I'm not familiar if this council or the council prior has looked into costs associated with that. I do not come with numbers or a plan or any approvals of such nature. I was, again, hoping to at least get the ball rolling with council to at least look into that. Right now, I think there are minimum 2, possibly 3 teams that operate out of that diamond. I believe there's a men's, we'll call fast pitch team, the Mud Hens, our team, and I've seen a youth team practice there before. You know, I like the Diamond. Last year was our inaugural season. We're headed into our second season. We had a successful first season. My intention is at minimum to have a team here out of Morriston for 3 years after this upcoming season, so for another 4 seasons. Our organization, UTM, hosts 4 to 6 tournaments a season or a year, ranging from U12 to U19, and are always looking to host more. There was some discussion with our leader of UTM to host tournaments, you know, in areas where they have teams. I think if we were to get a working washroom facility, there would be an opportunity to annually host a tournament out of Old Morrison Park, use of Morrison Meadows and Aberfoyle. I can't confirm that, but I can only say that there at least be some serious discussions in doing that. I would definitely push towards it, being that this is my second home. I'll call this my second home. You know, I love the Diamond. The Diamond's in great shape. Have working washrooms would be ideal. I would even suggest that if somehow council find funds available to upgrade the facility, that I would volunteer. If we're looking to paint, I'd volunteer my team, right? To go in and at least paint the exterior. I know it's not, they don't do plumbing, right? I don't think they have access to, hey, new toilets or anything. I don't know what's necessarily needed for that. But I mean, even as a UTM, I would be open to opening that up to the other 8 teams under our umbrella to say, is there anyone there that could volunteer, that can help, that can source out equipment, right? Just to lower the financial impact it might have on the community. I'm open to any and all suggestions. Again, just looking to get the ball rolling. And I'll take rejection like anybody else, it's fine. But, you know, at least to have some consideration is great. To hear me out, I do appreciate it, regardless of the decision.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. Thanks very much for coming to speak to us. I can tell you're very passionate about baseball in particular at this field. I have to be honest with you, I don't really know anything about what would be entailed in that, what the cost would be, what the maintenance on any of that would be. I'm certainly not opposed to having public washrooms in our parks, but to say to you today that I can support it without really knowing any of the information I would need to know
Absolutely.
is difficult to do. But I think perhaps certainly, you know, we're approaching our budget period and we have quite a bit of things to discuss as it relates to our current assets and you know, what's involved with that.
Yep.
But perhaps this is a discussion that can come up, you know, at that time.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Councillor Spools.
Yes, well, thank you for coming. It's good to see people like you engaging our youth.
Thank you.
And keeping them busy. It's very commendable. A question for the CEO. Is it possible to put a line item in the budget for our consideration with respect to these washrooms?
So we're going to be having a workshop basically on the draft capital budget. When?
Yes.
Pardon?
Sorry, you're good.
No, when is it?
Oh, sorry, September 25th.
September 20, I went the date, September 25th. So that's really the appropriate time to have discussions about potential capital projects. So certainly, we've heard the delegation, and there's a list of assets basically that we're talking about renewing in the context of this capital budget. So this would be, you know, a project that should be put in that context. So that's the appropriate time to do it. So the timing actually is quite good in that the request is being made just before the capital budget discussions take place. So, you know, I think that gives Mike some time to look at costs, both from an operational perspective and also a capital cost, so then you can make a decision in that context.
There might, if I can interject, there might even be an opportunity to have some of the local businesses partner up with the community here, or the township, excuse me, and, you know, provide funding, right? And then, you know, there'd be a sponsored plaque.
I was going to ask you that question, if there was any opportunity for your organization to contribute to the cost of this facility.
There might be but I'd be willing to at least hustle and get out, to, to Comcast or anywhere else of the businesses here that operate out of the township.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Counselor Bulmer?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, I'm last. Well, thank you for your delegation, and I think you're aware I back right onto that diamond, and I think it's extraordinary to see more use down there. If you were to try to build a new diamond, people would probably be up in arms because of the lights and the light pollution, but when it's all you've known for your whole life, you enjoy it, and watching the quality of ball that you bring to the township, it's, I play on that men's team, and man, oh man, those pitchers in your league, we couldn't even hold a candle to them. So it's pretty impressive. Very proud that you're bringing them to our community. I realize that maybe softball diamonds are maybe becoming scarce.
Sure.
And like you mentioned, I believe Morrison Diamond, and I've been told from people in this organization that it's our best diamond, the diamond. You know,
100%.
It needs some rehabilitation for fencing and the washrooms. I'm supportive of getting the washrooms open again. I've made a little joke to staff that we have an asset management plan, not an asset abandonment plan. So I look forward to the proposal from the supervisor of public works and some costing, and we have a wonderful community here, corporate and residential, and I'm sure there would be support for some fundraising there.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you very much. So
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Spillo, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that council receives a presentation by Jason Sacker with respect to the availability of washroom facilities at Old Morrison Ballpark, and that council refer the matter to the 2020 capital budget. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Have a
Awesome.
good night.
Thanks. Have a great evening.
Okay, let's go back to Lafarge correspondence. All right, if you guys want to pull up your Lafarge correspondence. Any questions or comments on the Lafarge correspondence? Councillor Spillos?
Yeah, these series of letters begs a question more, what's this all about type of thing. It's not clear what specifically they are doing and why they are doing it. I was wondering if we can insist that they come and give us a presentation?
I think that's for that, right? You just want to have a quick read?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, that was kind of...
No, that's fine. Glad you're making that correction, because I will hardly support them coming in here and getting on with not avoiding us.
So maybe I'll read this resolution, and then we'll have some comments on it. So we have a resolution moved by Councillor Bulmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda. The council receives a correspondence from Lafarge Canada Inc. with respect to Lafarge McMillan Pit Site Plan Amendment and the final rehabilitation plan, and the council directs staff to arrange for Lafarge to delegate to council, provide clarification with respect to the site plan amendment and the final rehabilitation plan. So we'll open that up again to questions. We'll start with Councillor Goyda.
I have no questions.
No, that's fine. That addresses my concern.
And Councillor Bulmer, it's your resolution, but would you...
Well, yeah, just
comments?
there is a chance, and I can't recall if or when it happened, but there's a chance that they amended the operational site plan to facilitate extracting this area, but at that time neglected to amend the rehabilitation plan to match. So if that's the case, well, then there's no issue. But if extraction was done not in keeping with the extraction plan, and we're now adjusting the rehabilitation plan, well, maybe that's a different conversation. So I think it's worthy to have them in just to clarify which it is.
So it says here, clarification with respect to the site plan, and should we put extraction in there, or will the site plan encompass that? Will that cover?
The extraction plan is part of the site plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
as long as it
should
covers that.
include-
Okay.
should be in there.
Multifaceted document.
All right. All in favor? Carried. All right. The next one is the monthly monitoring report from Dufferin Aggregates. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Okay. We'll move on to IG. We have the Town of Wasaga Beach letter. Any questions or comments on that? Letter to the MECP. Any questions or comments on that? Well, I have a resolution here, so maybe I'll read the resolution again and we can open up it. So moved by Councillor Bulmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda. The council receives a correspondence from Conservation Halton dated August 28th, 2019, and the council advised Premier Doug Ford and MPP Jeff Urick, Minister of the Environment, Conservation Parks, that council supports the discussion paper and the next steps as outlined in the letter from Conservation Halton dated August 28th, 2019, and forward copies of the resolution to Conservation Halton and Conservation Ontario. So questions or comments on that?
No, I have no comments.
I think that's a good approach.
I'm good. Councillor Bellmer?
One of the reasons I supported this motion was, this could also expand this, getting out of what they'd consider, what the province may consider non-core, may lead to a lot of the lands that we generally, a lot of us enjoy here in the township as parks or public lands owned by the conservation authorities right across this township. More of those conservation authorities may look at getting out of those if they're deemed to be not core services. And if we lose those recreational opportunities and recreational spaces, it only increases the burden on the municipality to replace them with more parks, more activities, more spaces. So, if we lose it somewhere, we're going to have to make it up somewhere else. So I think it's important the province get the message that some of the things that the province may not see as core to the Conservation Authority's mandates do have benefits to the residents beyond what the province may be aware of.
I agree. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yep, all in favor? Carried. All right. Nominate an outstanding position. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay. Notice of Public Information Center, GTA West Transportation Corridor Route. You see that one? Any questions or comments? I have a, Councillor Bulmer?
Just as some background, it may seem odd to members of council that we get this, but at one time, this study did include protecting the Maltby Road corridor as a potential route, which would be why we continue to receive this. So going farther west, it did include a path north of Guelph and one south of Guelph, and they, for a time, had protected Maltby Road as a potential route to hook up to the new Highway 6 interchange over at the Hanlon. So,
Good information. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Then we have the signed resolution number 17, electronic delegation from Township of Larder Lake. Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Moved by Councillor Ballmer, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that the intergovernmental affairs correspondence items listed on the council agenda for September 18th, 2019 council meeting be received. All in favor? Carried. All right. Okay, reports. Fire, none. Finance. The Director of Finance has a report on the community benefit charge. Go ahead.
So this is just an update report regarding Bill 108 and what the township has sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We recently did a survey as requested by the ministry, and some of the questions in the survey involved how we currently calculate our cash in lieu of parkland values and development charge values for soft services. And so we were able to provide them with some of these values and some of that information. And that we recently upgraded our cash in lieu of parkland bylaw in 2017. And so one of the interesting components out of the survey was that basically the ministry indicated that the objective of this work is to ensure revenue neutrality for the municipality. So that was good. That was encouraging for us.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? I hope they stick to their word and then keep that revenue neutral.
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Swills, that the report FIN-2019-029 regarding the community benefits charge, Bill 108, be received. All in favor? Carried. All right. Nothing under administration. We have planning department report. Any questions or comments on that one? Monthly building report.
Nope.
Moved by Councillor Spula, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that the report building 2019-009 with respect to the building department monthly update August 2019 be received for information. Last chance. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay. And the same for, I'll just read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos, that report PW 2019-002 regarding the 2019 capital budget funding for Side Road 10 North culvert replacement be received, and that surplus funds of $54,000 be allocated to emergency works required for Side Road 10 North culvert replacement, asset number 95A. Questions or comments?
Nope.
Yes, I'd like to ask, I don't know, the CAO or the director, with respect to culverts, do we have a process to monitor these culverts? And on an annual basis, I seem to recall there's a study mandated by the province to do something every 2 years. And is this something that would have been done as part of that 2-year study?
I contacted GM Blue Plan, Matt Scott. I asked the criteria of identifying culverts. He was under the impression that that the township, first of all, started with certain sizes when it came to steel culverts, and all concrete structures, whether it be box culverts or bridges, be identified through the OSIM report. I currently have no map or definite location of all our steel culverts, whether they be driveway, crosser, equalizing culverts. The replacements in the past have gone through operating as far as a culvert being identified for replacement. Any capital projects in the spring, our culverts are identified and inspected to see if they need to be replaced when we pulverize and pave the roads. So currently, no, there's no inspection for every culvert out there.
Is there something we should be doing? I'm looking at this being a $50,000 cost. I can understand a simple culvert, driveway culvert, it's significantly less. But this is a capital cost. I realize you did go out for quotes, and I did realize you got competitive quotes, but certainly if it was part of a larger package, the cost would have been lower.
The majority of the cost, due to the breakdown, was for environmental issues, fish recovery and dewatering. This is a major GRCA tributary. It has basically a year-round flow, and we need this basically an outside source to do this type of work. Currently, Public Works doesn't have the resources to do this on our own.
No, I understand that. All I'm making a comment is that if it was part of a big package, it would have been tendered, and I'm sure we would have got cost savings. So is there a need to look at culverts of this nature where it's not a routine replacement as part of the operating budget, but identify these special culverts and track them separately?
I can look into that. This culvert has been identified that it's about 30-plus years old through the GRCA, the last time it was replaced. So it's more than met its lifespan. I would have to start looking through old records as far as the last time these certain size culverts were replaced. I don't have an answer per se on the exact years. There's different variables that come into play, especially with steel culverts, as far as erosion, corrosion rates. This one's currently located on a gravel road, so its lifespan probably was longer than you would have on an asphalt road, just from lack of salt.
No, I'll leave it up to the CEO and you to decide whether or not it requires a special review on an annual basis and budgeted accordingly. Like, this is a big-ticket item, it's not a simple replacement.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick comparison, the Public Works Department replaced 9 culverts this year on our own, and between road and driveway, and the cost came in about $4,500.
No, I appreciate that. That's run-of-the-mills. All I'm saying, this is a special situation. If we have these other special situations, I'm asking you whether they should be monitored and replaced on a fixed schedule rather than wait for it to fail.
Yes, basically.
I don't need the answer now. I'm just suggesting you discuss it with the CEO and
Okay.
proceed accordingly.
Any other questions or comments? I have a couple. Have we identified any other culverts that have GRCA tributaries running through them? Do you have an idea how many of these culverts we have?
Approximately about 15 to 20.
Where they be under the same situation if they need to replace one, it would be, the fish capture, the whole.
Yes.
And to the Director of Finance, are they identified in the asset management plan, those 15 to 20 culverts?
The culverts in the OSUM report are identified in the asset management plan. Mike?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, just to reiterate, there's only a certain amount of seal culverts identified in the OSIN report, and that's due to their size, which is generally like close to 800, 900 mils. There's a couple identified on concession 7 north of 34. We're kind of in a holding pattern with replacing them with hopes of one day the ministry taking over that stretch of road. So we're,
Yeah.
the last culvert on the 7th that was replaced was back in 2006. So,
All right, thank you. So I read the motion, so do you need me to reread it? Are you guys okay? All in favor? Carried. All right, Recreation Department, none. Mayor's update, nothing right now. Any notices of motion? Councilor Willis?
Yes, I'd like to have a notice of motion for the next council meeting. I plan to have a motion with respect to delegating to the County Roads Committee the lane configuration through Aberfoyle. As you recall, the council several meetings ago supported the notion of 2 lanes of traffic, a center turn lane and a parking lane, and to be done when the Morrison bypass is done. Through discussions with the mayor, he believes the timing might be better suited when the paving is done this year. So I'd like to bring that forward and perhaps have a presentation ready for you to look at of what I plan to present to the county.
Thank you. Any other notices of motion? All right. Okay, committee minutes. What do we have here? Okay. Moved by Councilor Spillo, seconded by Councilor Goyda, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as written and distributed. A, August 13th, 2019 Committee of Adjustment minutes. B, August 13th, 2019 Planning and Development Advisory Committee minutes. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. All right. Any municipal announcements? Councilor Spillis?
Yes, the Internet Committee, which you endorsed, met. We plan to meet every 2 weeks. There's 6 highly motivated individuals on the committee. There's another individual who's going to come as well to a meeting tomorrow. And they're varied backgrounds, and they're very keen on improving the post-lunch internet service. There's all kinds of war stories we heard around the table. So. We'll keep on moving, and hopefully within a few months, we'll have something to report concrete to the council.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Willis. Any other municipal announcements? Councilor Bulmer?
Thank you. Yes, I had the opportunity this morning to attend another Safe Communities leadership table meeting up in Boyne this morning. It's a very large group that meets as part of this leadership table because there's also, it's an interesting group in its organization that has subgroups of the Safe Communities which are called priority advisory groups that focus on falls prevention, motor vehicle safety, and harm reduction. And it's interesting that the 5 of the 7 member municipalities have Safe Communities groups, and we're one of the 2 that does not. Postlinch and Center Wellington currently do not have Safe Communities groups. I'm trying to get a handle on exactly what the Safe Communities groups do in each municipality, and when I get a better understanding of it, I may speak to the CAO about the possibility of looking at starting a branch here, or whether I'm not sure whether that's, since not all the municipalities have it, I'm trying to figure out why some do and some don't. But what was interesting today, the organization received a presentation from an organization called Sanguine, who has a mobile van providing service in partnership with the Guelph Wellington Dufferin Health Unit. They got a 2-year Trillium grant to have a mobile service van out there, and providing a variety of services. Now, Sanguine that's the French word for, I think, blood or fluid or something, but they provide services to people who are struggling with hepatitis C and other various blood-borne diseases, and help connect them with the services they need relating to shelter and food and employment and whatever, or health services. They can actually take blood on the van and have their blood tested. They can do a variety of tests, not just related to bloodborne diseases, but they also provide pregnancy tests and sexually transmitted diseases testing. They don't provide the results the day of, but they make arrangements for the person to come back to the van the following week with the test results. It's interesting, they also have a mobile food bank in the van because a lot of these people are either homeless or struggling. They give out socks are particularly popular in the wintertime because a lot of these people don't have access to laundry facilities, so they wear out their socks. And what was surprising, what came out, they're currently servicing 2 communities in the county, Erin and Drayton, I believe it is. And in both communities, none of them knew that they had a need for this van until it showed up and people came out to take advantage of its services. The people were, prior to that, hidden in the community. And it made me think of, before buses were accessible, no one thought anybody in a wheelchair wanted to take a bus. It's when people are invisible, you can't see them. So they are looking at possibly expanding the services provided on the van and possibly expanding the areas where service is provided in the county. So it was an interesting presentation. So more to come as I go to more of these meetings. So
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Bulmer. Any other? All right. Okay, so unfinished business. Anything? No. All right. Bylaws. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos, that the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. A, BL-2019-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 1985 as amended, being the zoning bylaw for the Township of Puslinch, 6920 Concession Road 1. B, bylaw 2019-055 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 023/18 as amended, being the zoning bylaw for the Township of Puslinch, 6920 Concession Road 1. Any questions or comments? No? All in favor? Carried. Confirming bylaw. All right. Moved by Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goyda, that the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw BL 2019-056 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Puslinch as being held on the 18th day of September 2019. All in favor?
just a question.
Oh, quick question?
Did you do both bylaws for Sunrise there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess they blended into one in my
Yeah, they
mind.
sounded very similar. so-
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, all in favor of this bylaw? All right. Moved by Councillor Goyda, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. The council hereby adjourns at 8:48 PM. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.